Good morning, everyone. I hope you're having a great day and that you're enjoying your day at home and that you're keeping up with your work. Now, we're starting a new chapter today. We're starting chapter 2, which is about research, the scientific method, and basically how psychologists are able to come to the conclusions that they reach about things like human behavior and the human mind. Okay? Now, something to think about is that psychologists over the years have found that separation weakens romantic attraction. And as the saying goes, out of sight, out of mind. Now, I want you to think about why this might be true, because this is a true statement. But, why is that? And how do we know that? Now, then there's, the other idea that, absence makes the heart grow fonder, which just turns out this is not true. Again, both of these seem like common sense, when you're not around someone, you tend to miss them. But really, it's shown that if you're not around someone, you tend to just kind of forget that they exist because you're too busy going about your daily life. Now, the thing is, both of these seem like common sense, but obviously there's a problem because common sense can easily describe something, after it has happened more so than it predicts what will happen. And really, this is what is known as hindsight bias. This is the idea that after you learn something, you would have been like, I knew it all along. Okay. Now, here's a couple of events. You had, like in 2001, the dot-com bubble crashed, causing thousands of people to lose millions of dollars. And, in hindsight, everybody's like, well, the market was obviously overdue for a correction. 9/11, which happened before, like these are two events that happened before some of y'all were born, or before some of you were born. But the World Trade Center's North Tower is hit by a commercial airliner, and 43 minutes later, the South Tower is hit. Well, a lot of people were saying, well, people in the second tower should have immediately evacuated. Well, they had no reason to think that there was anything wrong, though evacuating, probably seemed like a wise option even then. It's still, hindsight is 20/20, meaning you always know better when you get a chance to think back on something. So thus, learning the outcome of a study can make it seem like obvious common sense. And so scientific inquiry and critical thinking can help us overcome this tendency to overestimate our intuition. Okay? So about how many seconds do you think it would have taken you to unscramble each of these? Now, once people know the target word, hindsight makes it obvious, so much so that they become pretty overconfident. And they think that they would have seen the solution in about 10 seconds or so, when in reality, the average problem solver spends about 3 minutes. Though you might have been able to, I know some people that can solve these things really quickly, but other people, it takes them a lot more time. Now, hindsight bias and overconfidence lead us to overestimate our tuition. And scientific inquiry, focused by curious skepticism, can help us sift reality from illusions. So, between hindsight bias and overconfidence, we think we know more than what we do. Now, we often look for evidence that proves we are right. And scientific approach makes testing the so-called evidence determine whether we are right or not. So the idea is that you're trying to determine whether you actually know what you're talking about. Okay? Now, whether it's reading a news report or listening to a conversation, critical thinkers are always asking questions. They wonder, how do they know that? What is this person's agenda? Is the conclusion based on intuition and gut feelings, or is it actually based on actual evidence that is presented? And what other explanations are possible? And this is actually something that you can see in your daily life nowadays. I mean, if you just get on, any kind of social media nowadays, you'll see people blindly posting stuff just because they agree with it. Now, that's a different concept altogether, but the idea is still the same. How many of these people are actually critically thinking? They're examining what is the reason for this post? Why, what point are they trying to prove? What are their values? What evidence are they using? Is this just like a one-time deal? Or are they trying to be funny with it? What is their goal? And typically we tend to use the word theory to mean a hunch, as in I have a theory about that. But really, that's just kind of like a statement based on, something you may have experienced, but it doesn't necessarily make it always true. Whereas in science, a theory is linked with observation. And so a theory, which according to the book is a set of statements designed to account for and predict and even suggest ways of controlling certain phenomena. In short, a theory is supposed to be based on research results, meaning it's been tried and tested many, many, many times. And as a result of this, it's a result of the scientific method or approach, which some of this should seem like review for you. Okay? Now, so let's say we wanted to learn about depression, right? So imagine we observe over a short period of time that people with depression describe their past, present, and future in gloomy terms. Now, we might therefore theorize that low self-esteem contributes to depression. Okay, sounds good. Sure, but we should still test it in order to make sure we know what we're doing. So the first thing we do is write a testable prediction or a hypothesis. This is what we want to study. So what would a good hypothesis be? People with low self-esteem score higher on a depression scale, meaning if you have low self-esteem, you're going to be more likely to be depressed. Right? Now, how would we test our hypothesis? We have to establish what is low self-esteem and what is depression. So we could give a survey indicating their agreement to statements like, I have good ideas or I'm fun to be with. And from there, we would see whether, as we hypothesized, people who report poor self-images also score higher on a depression scale. But there's a thing you got to worry about, though. Is this thing called bias. Bias means it's like a certain preconceived idea that you bring into the experiment. And so how? Well, in your diagnosis, you may perceive that depressed neutral comments as negative. So comments that come across that may seem sad or depressed, really that may not actually be. You may end up like lumping those in there with the depressed comments, so it will skew your results. But you're like, one of the biggest things that you have to be able to do with a scientific method is replication, meaning you have to be able to replicate the experiment. It's not something that can only be done once, and you judge that as accurate. It has to be done many, 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 many times, like as many times as you can possibly get it to go. And so a valid result should be able to be replicated independently, whereas an invalid result, which was achieved due to some error or just chance, will not be able to be consistently reproduced. Meaning that if you cannot consistently reproduce the outcome, then it's not accurate. So no one could say that hypothesis is a theory without replication. Sometimes you hear about a study in the news about how one experiment resulted in these amazing results, but nobody's been able to, replicate it. And when you hear this, don't get your hopes up. Just wait for it to be replicated, and eventually you'll learn if it was an accurate, conclusion.
Have you noticed that Howard can take any topic and use it to remind you that he...
All right. So even Big Bang Theory, which some of y'all may have watched, they, believe in the power of replication. So just watch this clip here.
Have you noticed that Howard can take any topic and use it to remind you that he went to space?
Interesting hypothesis. Let's apply the scientific method. Perform an experiment.
Okay. Hey, Howard, any thoughts on where we should get dinner?
Anywhere but the space station.
I mean, on a good day, dinner was a bag full of meatloaf.
But hey, you don't go there for the food, you go there for the view.
That's fascinating. Let me see if I can duplicate the result. Howard, I've always thought the lemon was an underrated fruit. Care to weigh in?
Not really.
Oh, well.
People say the Soyuz capsule is a lemon, but...
Yeah, but hey, that baby got me to space and back.
So did you notice, it was done in a joking way, but they were actually trying to figure out how to replicate their, comment, right? Or replicate their experiment, even on just, when they're just kind of testing it on their buddy. Now, in the end, our theory is only useful if it effectively organizes a range of self-reports and observations, or puts all or most of our observations in very clear terms. Okay? It also implies clear predictions that anyone can use to check the theory or to derive practical applications. In other words, you have to be able to replicate it, and it has to be something that's very clear, like, here's what we did. We did this, 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 and this, and we got similar results every time we did the experiment. So in the end, further results may even revise the theory that even better predicts what we know about depression. So the first study may have learned something, but someone going back and repeating the study may have actually made it a better observation, may have made it a better story or a better experiment. So really, replication, the scientific method, are actually great for us, being able to determine how we can learn about things and the information that we have. And basically, if you can't replicate an experiment, then it's probably not a good experiment, and you need to try again. But if you can easily replicate it, then keep testing it, and eventually you'll come to very good information about what you know, like in this case about depression. Okay, so that's the end of the PowerPoint for today and the lesson today. I hope you were doing well at home. I hope you were able to keep up with your work. If you have any questions, please email me or call my classroom phone, and I will see you tomorrow. Thank you.